Is the Samsung Galaxy S7 worth buying in 2020? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, and this is the Samsung Galaxy S7 in 2020. Now, this device is roughly 4 years old, so certainly a bit of an older phone. But at the same time, you can get this device currently for a very affordable price. Now, I personally didn't buy this phone. This device used to be my mom's main phone, and then I got her the LG G7, so in return, she gave me this so that I can make some video content about it. But essentially, if you were to buy this device right now, renewed from Amazon, it's going for around $120. So certainly, if you want to get a device for not much money, then you might want to consider the Galaxy S7. Now, certainly take a look at the links in the video description though to see the most up-to-date pricing for the phone, as I'm sure depending on when you're watching this video, the price of the device has gone down even more. Now, the phone is available in a variety of different variants. This is the Verizon wireless variant of the phone. Of course, you can also buy it unlocked, so go whichever route best suits your needs. But you can see with this phone especially, it is loaded full of bloatware. We have all these different games. I did install Instagram and Twitter so far, but you can see all these other apps. What's especially hilarious is that Disney Plus was added to the phone very recently with a security patch. So even though this phone is about 4 years old, Verizon is continuing to push bloatware onto the phone, which is hilarious and cringy and a little bit sad, but it is what it is. Now, despite this phone being launched quite a while ago, it actually features some pretty impressive specifications. So we're getting a 5.1-inch display with Corning Gorilla Glass 4. We're getting a Super AMOLED display on here at 1440p, giving us a PPI of 577 with a 16:9 aspect ratio. So it's certainly been a while since I've had a phone that has a 16:9 aspect ratio. But you can see it's a pretty decent looking device. Now, this particular phone has gotten some wear and tear since it was new. You can see that the home button, for example, is pretty worn out. Now, what's interesting is that the fingerprint sensor still does work perfectly fine, so that is a really good thing. But getting back to the display here, I mean, it's a really good looking display. I mean, I feel like 1440p is probably a little bit too much for a display that is at this size. And another thing too with this phone is that we are getting a 72.1% screen to body ratio. So pretty thick bezels on the top and bottom. Of course, we have a off-screen button here. We also have off-screen back and recent app buttons as well. So I especially have not used a phone in a long time that had buttons like this. Now up top here on the device, we do have a 5-megapixel front-facing camera. And one of the really good things about the Galaxy S7 is that even now in 2020, this phone takes photos and videos that are a lot better than many other budget smartphones, especially phones that are under $150. So that's certainly something that this phone definitely has going for it. Now internally, we're getting 32 gigabytes of storage with SD card expansion. So 32 gigs is not too much in 2020. And all of that bloatware especially does fill up the device quite a bit. Now, despite all of that though, you can see that we still do get roughly 16 gigabytes of available storage. So that's pretty decent, but of course, I would say for most people, you probably will want to put a micro SD card in this device to expand that storage, just to give you extra space for videos, photos, music, all that good stuff. Now, this phone does have wireless charging, which is pretty cool. And then as far as security options go, we of course have the fingerprint sensor right here. So that's really nice. Now on the back of the device, we have a 12-megapixel camera, and there is no portrait mode with the rear or front cameras. Now we do get that feature with the Galaxy S8, the successor to this phone, but the S7 does not feature portrait mode at all. I believe back in 2016, that feature wasn't really a feature anywhere. Maybe the iPhone 7 Plus had it, but that's about it. So definitely, if you do want that, you're gonna have to go with a newer device, or at least not this device. Now internally, we're getting 4 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 processor. So performance is pretty good on this device. Now, this phone, of course, does have a lot of bloatware on it, which I'm sure doesn't help at all with the performance. But I would say for most people, I would probably recommend not going with the S7 and getting the S8. Now it's assuming that you're willing and able to afford to spend the extra money for the S8, because you certainly will be getting much better performance. But if you absolutely must spend around $130 to $120, and you definitely want to get an older Samsung flagship, then I suppose this is a good option. But keep in mind that you are going to be getting a significantly better device by going with the S8. Now I did run an Antutu benchmark test with this phone and I got a score of 128,258. So that's actually pretty decent, especially for a phone in the kind of lower $100 tier. So, comparing it to other phones like the Umidigi A3X, which I recently featured here on the channel, which has a much lower score than this, despite being roughly the same price, you are certainly getting better performance with the S7 for your money. So the Snapdragon 820 certainly is somewhat decent, but it's nowhere near the newer 800 series processors from Qualcomm. Now, one cool surprise though with the Galaxy S7 is that we do get 4K video recording with the rear camera. And then for the front camera, we get 1440p video recording. So that is really cool. And the phone does feature a 3000 milliamp hour internal battery with 15 watt fast charging. Now, unfortunately for this phone specifically, the battery doesn't really hold up too well. Now, of course, with other S7s, that might be different. It just depends on the amount of usage those phones have had. But that's definitely one of the downsides with buying a phone that is 4 years old, is that you are going to be getting an older, weaker, less effective battery. So remember that. Now, there are different places online and in person where you can take this phone to get a battery swap. I will be making a video about that in the future, but of course you do have to pay for those services. So tack that onto the price that you're paying for this phone, and it might make sense then to buy something better and newer. But if you're not too concerned about battery life, then I guess don't worry about that issue, but I know that a lot of people definitely want to get good battery life with their devices. Now this phone does feature 15 watt fast charging, which is impressive. It is via micro USB, of course. We'll talk about that more in a second. But this phone is the last Galaxy S series phone to have micro USB. Now the software on here is Android 8 Oreo. Samsung is done with providing it with updates. And we do get Samsung Experience 9.0 as the software overlay here. So it's not One UI. One UI started with Android 9 Pie. And another interesting thing too is that the phone does have the December 1st, 2019 security patch, and I believe that's the final security patch that the S7 will ever receive. That's actually pretty impressive. I'm surprised that Samsung has provided security patches for this long, but I don't anticipate on receiving any more of them in the future. Now, as far as the hardware goes, this phone still is a very decent piece of hardware. Of course, we're getting a really nice display with the device, and it is 16:9. So if you do want to watch 16:9 content, which most videos, even nowadays, still are, you're able to watch that content without having to crop in or without having to have any sort of black bars anywhere on the device. So certainly a very immersive experience. Now, of course, the trade-off, kind of the downside, is that you do have pretty thick bezels on the top and bottom. So if that's something that bothers you, then you might want to go for a different device, such as maybe an A series phone, for example. But of course, be prepared to spend more. Now the phone does have a metal band running around the sides of it, so a premium touch there. And on the left side of the device, we have the volume buttons. Then on the right of the phone, we have the power button. Another interesting thing about the Galaxy S7 is that it does feature a completely flat display. I believe that there is also an S7 Edge, and that was the phone that featured kind of the more curved off display edges. But with the Galaxy S8, that device actually does feature some curves on the display. But if you do want a Galaxy S series phone with a completely flat display, you're gonna have to go for either the S7 or go for one of the newer devices like the Galaxy S20. But with the S8 and S9, you do get some curves on the display. So keep that in mind, and if that bothers you, then just know what you're getting into. Now, again, on the right side of the phone, we do have that power button. On the top, we have the noise canceling microphone and the slot for the SD card and SIM card. Then on the bottom of the phone, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, the micro USB port for charging and data transfer. We have the microphone and we have the speaker. Now, for a phone that was launched in early 2016, it is pretty acceptable to have micro USB. And again, like I mentioned a second ago, All the S series phones after the S7 do feature USB-C, which of course, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. Now on the backside of the phone, we do have the camera module, we have the heart rate sensor, we have the flash, I have some carrier branding on this particular phone, and then of course the Galaxy S7 branding, but pretty nice material on the back here. Definitely more of a reflective material, but you know, it looks nice and premium, that's for sure. I mean, this phone was one of the best devices out there when it first was launched in 2016. So of course we've come a long way since then, but the phone has aged decently well. Now, if you're big into going on Instagram, then just know that it still is a good experience. So you are gonna be able to scroll pretty smoothly as well as zoom in smoothly. And then of course, if you wanna swipe over and record content, you can record videos. Everything looks pretty clear. The 5 megapixel front facing camera still does take decent photos and videos, that's for sure. Everything looks pretty clear. The 5 megapixel front. And the device has good microphones too. And then of course, if you want to go through your various stories, you can do that as well. So, you know, that's a great thing too to see here. So you can go through your stories, view all that content, and interact with your friends and colleagues. But I'm certainly interested in knowing what you think about the Samsung Galaxy S7. Do you think it's worth getting in 2020? Or do you think you're better off getting something a little bit more premium, maybe something a little more expensive? Or would you rather get a brand new budget phone in the same price range? Certainly curious to know about your thoughts regarding that. Of course, if you are looking to buy this device, then I do recommend picking it up over on Amazon as a renewed phone. And definitely take a look at the links in the video description to check that out. But this is Kevin here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.